What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 3 and Out YouTube page. I'm John Middlekauff, and we are talking football all day, every day. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Let's roll, baby. Okay, Middlekauff mailbag time. Easiest way to get in the mailbag, at John Middlekauff on Instagram. Fire in those DMs and do it right now. I have a mailbag question for you. I don't think that Jayden will have much success this year. The Commies have one of the worst ranked offensive lines in football, according to Pro Football Focus. Jayden had a very bad pressure to sack ratio in college. The Commanders are in the division with 3 good defensive lines, and they also play the AFC North. I think all these factors will lead to a very difficult season. A lot of people are high on Washington this year, but I don't see how a rookie that gets sacked a lot can succeed in these circumstances. Do you think there are real concerns to have about the team? I've been going back and forth. Should I do like my top 10 teams? I might end up doing like a power 5 and bottom 5. But I was thinking about my bottom 5, my cellar dwellers, my just teams that are going to compete for the number 1 overall pick. They're one of them. I don't think they're going to be any good. I really don't. You know, it really crystallized watching Jayden Daniels or LSU the other night. He played, those 2 tackles would start for the Commanders. His 2 tackles in college that are still there would start. Malik Neighbors went 7th overall or 6th overall. Brian, the number 2 wide receiver on the team, went in the top 25. Because his tight end at LSU looks like a stud. That team, that was an all-star team on offense. And I'm not trying, he was really good. But just running around and freelance and making plays. Now, he's accurate down the field, but I'm with you. You know, if your guards and centers can't block, you get pressure up the middle, you're scrambling around for your life. The talent he's playing with now relative to the league is so much worse than the talent he played with last year relative to who he was playing. So his 1 year succeeding, and it was awesome, was with the best of the best. Now, if he can prove he can do it in the NFL, more power to him. I'm not acting like he's going to be a scrub, but I'm out on Washington. I think Washington is not going to be good this year. Mailbag question. Because you got to win from within the pocket. And when you're getting hit all the time, it's hard. Their offensive line, a lot of offense. Remember Joe Burrow his rookie year? He was getting killed. His leg got snapped. You can't function as a young player who's kind of learning on the ropes, new defensive coordinators, new players, just quicker game, and you're just under duress like every other snap. Even if you can run like Jayden, it'll just wear your ass down. Mailbag. William Belichick. Good morning, sir. My question is this. Is there a chance that owners are going to keep Bill out of being a head coach because of his past relationships and attitude toward everyone? Could they be setting an example and making sure he doesn't become the all-time wins leader? You know, what's funny is Colin asked me about the Tom Brady situation. If you haven't heard, there have been a lot of stories reported that he's not allowed to go in the other facilities. He's not allowed to be critical of the officials. I'm pretty sure he can't be critical and say certain things about teams and players. So it's a weird story that doesn't seem necessary. But think about this. Belichick and Brady, think how much money he costs teams over the last 20 years. Both those guys. Beating them in big playoff games. Think if they only had won 3 Super Bowls instead of 6. Well, those 3 might have gone to 3 other teams. Maybe the Ravens have another. Maybe the Colts have another. Maybe the Steelers get one. Over that time when Belichick owned them. I would imagine a lot of owners don't like those guys. Not necessarily personally have a huge problem with them, but this is a competitive business. So to me, the Tom Brady thing is not shocking. The Belichick thing, though, if you win in the NFL, you make so much money. You don't have to win a Super Bowl to like, there's not a, let me rephrase that. If you're consistently winning, like the Packers, the Steelers, like the Niners for the last 15 years, but you can't win a Super Bowl, but you're in the playoffs all the time, you're making a ton. Best case scenario, you win Super Bowls, the Chiefs, the Patriots, you win a bunch. That's obviously what everyone wants to do. But there is a big difference between being under 500 all the time and winning and making the playoffs, where you can charge people, just the amount of money you make off advertising in terms of the placement in your stadium. It's a big deal. And Belichick cost a lot of those teams probably playoff victories, extra home games, the chance to cash in even more, like Robert Kraft did. So I do wonder if owners have it out for those two guys. But if you have the opportunity to hire Bill Belichick and he can help you do that, win, if you think he can, I don't think owners will care. So I don't think there's like collusion on the fact that I think the bigger deal is his age, his coaching staff, the power he wants or doesn't want. Like I think those are the fair questions more than trying to screw him. Because I don't. The only person who cares the most about you is you. The only person who cares the most about, let's pick these teams, the Giants, the Eagles, the whoever, their owner, like they're the ones cashing in on it if it works. So I would be shocked if he doesn't interview for basically every team that's open this offseason. We're a long way to go there. We haven't had anyone fired yet. Why doesn't the NFL and their experts just admit they don't know how to evaluate quarterbacks? Then they try, but they are no better than the bozos like me in guessing this stuff. So much more to it than stats and measurements. Totally agree. I think the hard part about evaluating guys is you can never measure the intangible stuff. And in football, more than the other sports, it matters the most. Because you practice 5 times more than you play. Because the weightlifting that comes along with playing the sport is so intense. Because the physicality of the sport is so much different than baseball or basketball. And you can't measure how bad that guy wants it. Like TJ Watt, let's use him as an example. I know you're talking quarterbacks, but I think it works for a lot of positions. You watch that guy play, you're like, this guy's intensity is like his brother. How the hell did this guy last till the late 20s? You see guys like Richard Sherman or George Kittle or just the countless guys in the 5th, 6th, 7th round that make it. Like, why is Brock Purdy a really good quarterback? Yeah, he benefits from playing with good players. Patrick Mahomes got to play with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce when he started. Because as Sam Darnold said, I've never seen a guy prepare like that in my career. That's what Sam Darnold said, who was the backup for Brock Purdy and had already been in the league for 5 years. So I just, you can't measure that stuff. You're just like, he's kind of short, arm's not great. And it's such an intense sport in terms of preparation, in terms of film study, in terms of cognitively how fast you can see something. Listen, I love Justin Fields coming out. I would have taken him number 2 overall if I was the Jets. I would have been wrong. Because I saw someone, Florio wrote the other day, he's like, Mike Zimmer takes a shot at Rick Spielman. Because one of the things Zimmer said is they fought the last couple years they were together, and one of the reasons they fought was over drafting quarterbacks. He wanted him to draft other positions. And Spielman, I guess, wanted to draft Justin Fields and wanted to trade up. And one of the things Zimmer said is, well, he hasn't done anything in the league. And Florio took exception with that. It's like, well, yeah, he's played in the league, just not very well. And if you did a redraft on that draft, trading up for Justin Fields would have been an abomination for the Minnesota Vikings. Because none of those quarterbacks, beside Trevor Lawrence, sniff the first round. Trey Lance might go undrafted. Think about that. He went 3rd. He might go undrafted. He's a 3rd-string quarterback in year 4. You don't draft 3rd-string quarterbacks in year 4. Mac Jones probably goes in like the fourth or fifth. Same with Fields. And Zach Wilson probably, he'd still go in the seventh, probably because of his physical abilities. So it's like, yeah, I mean, it was a disaster. I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but oh, because like you watch Fields, it's like, well, coach him up, figure out how to do it. Some guys, you can coach them as hard as you want. If they can't feel comfortable reading a defense and staying calm instead of taking off in the pocket, the offense isn't going to work over the course of time. People saying how Bill only has 6 rings is a blatant twisting of the truth. Bill has 8, 6 with the Pats and 2 with the Giants. I know he was only a coordinator, but his game plan against the Bills' #1 offense was a huge part of the game, and yet no one talks about them. Well, it is 2024, and that was 1990, but I hear what you're saying. If you can't tell, I'm a Pats fan who's very cynical about the future with Gerard Mayo as a coach. My dad is a Niners fan and a diehard Rams hater. He thinks the Rams bought their Super Bowl in 21, and Sean McVay is the biggest cheater in the league, with him not kicking the field goal in the game not to hit the spread. That wasn't even a question. My question is, I acquired Saquon in fantasy football. 1K. I know you don't play. He fell to me, and I never got him in a mock draft. So when I saw his name, I immediately had to scoop him. What do you think this year projects of Saquon? Mainly, how do you think the red zone will work? You pay a back good money. I would expect him to take some of the workload in the red zone. Just wondering what your opinion will be looking forward to this year. I think he's going to have a massive year. They have a really good offensive line. They should run the ball if they're up in some. If you think they're going to be a 10 or 11 win team, well, they're going to have the lead in the second half. What do? You run the ball. He can catch the ball. So it's easy to run screenplays for him, wheel routes, screen routes. He's a great check down wide receiver, which Jalen has no problem doing. The red zone stuff, is the tush push still a thing? Are they still going to be as dominant with the tush push without Jason Kelce? No one knows. We'll see. If it's not as effective, you give it to him. I would be stunned if Saquon doesn't have, I'd put his over under at touchdowns 10.5. I would say that 10 to 12 range. And from a yardage standpoint, I think he should be a 1,300 yard rusher. Question for the bag. Do you think the Bengals' cheap owner will prevent them from winning a Super Bowl with Burrow in his prime? How do they overcome the Scrooge in Mike Brown? Well, we'll have to see how this Chase situation plays out. Because it was like he was holding in, and then it felt like things were progressing, like he was going to practice. Then Zach Taylor said he was going to play week 1, and then it felt like he disappeared. So is news going to break by the time you're listening to this? They've extended Jamar Chase. He spent a lot of money over the years on players, especially the last 3 or 4 of the Joe Burrow era. So he gave Joe Burrow $212 million. It's hard to call him cheap currently. I'm gonna withhold judgment. Obviously, in the past, there have been major question marks. Carson Palmer days, no issue there. Calling him that, but I would say the last couple of years, like they've been pretty invested. I'm a Cowboys fan. Any hope this year? Yeah, I got you guys making the playoffs. And hypothetical question: if Patrick Mahomes requested a trade, who do you think would have the best offer, and what would a deal look like? Would it be like 5 first-round picks and like your best defensive player, or maybe like a good young offensive lineman? Or could we see teams offer quarterbacks like Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson? Well, the Ravens would offer Lamar Jackson, and Brett Veach would hang up the phone. I'm a sucker for these questions, even though they're so stupid, because I guess players that you didn't think were going to request a trade, so you never know. But I would say Patrick Mahomes. The one thing the Chiefs have going for them, even if Andy were to retire in the next couple years, is that whole time they've been with Brett Veach. And if Andy were to retire, Veach wouldn't retire. So Veach's relationship with Patrick, knowing that he was the reason that he pounded the table for John Dorsey to draft him, the way they talk about him, I think they're pretty lucky that way that their relationship is so strong. But if he did request a trade, I mean, I think every team in the league's picking up the phone. I I don't think you can trade more than 3 first round picks. Could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure there's a league rule that you can only trade 3 years out. Again, don't fact check me on that. I'd probably need like Jake Rosenberg on the horn to give me the thumbs up or thumbs down on that one. But I've heard that before because I don't think we've ever seen a deal bigger than 3 years out. But I think that's part of the reason why. But yeah, take it all. Is there Patrick Mahomes? This is how you know how good of a player he is. He's so good that there is no offer that you could give to the Chiefs that they wouldn't hang up. Like they're not even having a meeting, not even having a meeting where I could call. There is not another quarterback in the league that I couldn't call and not get a meeting from the other GM and the coach. What if the Bears called the Bills? We'll give you Caleb Williams and 3 first round picks for Josh Allen. Now, I wouldn't do that because in the best case scenario of Caleb Williams, he becomes Josh Allen. But like you might have a meeting like, hey, we get this rookie contract, we get the 3 first round picks. Every other quarterback, you get a meeting. It doesn't mean that you would do it. There might not be enough to trade for Josh Allen or Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is a little different because he's injured, but you know what I mean. There is zero offer that you could get Brett Veach and Andy Reid to even take a meeting, to even get Veach to be like, hey, Andy, I think we need to talk about this. Instead, it's like, Coach, you believe what these fucking idiots called me about? Let's go grab a hot dog. Packers fan from Australia. Question for the bag. With the season about to start, I was surprised Green Bay are underdogs against the Eagles. The Eagles have had a lot of woes this offseason, while the Packers have addressed the secondary with McKinney and the new DC as well. I'm pro Halfley. Like, I think it's going to work. But just because you hire a defensive coordinator who, in a perfect world, is better than your last defensive coordinator does not mean just because you made a change to DC, it's going to work. And this guy's never been a defensive coordinator in the NFL. So to just plug Halfley in as a positive addition, to me, he's an unknown. Like the Eagles and you hire defensive coordinators. One hired Vic Fangio, who I think it's safe to say has been one of the better defensive coordinators of his generation. And the other hired a guy who's never been a defensive coordinator. Now, the Packers could be better than the Eagles on defense. Time will tell. But today, we can't say, before they kick off on Friday, the Packers edition of Halfley is a positive. Now, you can say it's a positive simply from the fact that they got rid of the old defensive coordinator, Joe Barry, right? That's who was the last defensive coordinator. But they've gone through a lot of defensive coordinators over my late 20s and 30s. And you guys have been consistently bad on defense. So, to me, someone's got to be favored in the game. Like, the Chiefs one's easy. Chiefs at home, Ravens. We just kicked your ass in the playoffs. That's an easy 3, 4, 5-point spread, right? You're not going to be a touchdown over a team with Lamar Jackson, but you're not going to be a field goal. So I think the last time I looked a couple days ago was 4.5. I haven't even looked at the Eagles line yet, but someone's got to be favored in the game. And also it's based on who's betting who. I would make it a pick 'em because who knows? Honestly, I think either team could win 13 games, best case, and I think both teams, worst case, could win like 9. So the other thing, the game's in Brazil. I don't know how far a flight it is for Green Bay, but I think it's like an 8-hour flight from Philly. So I think the Packers ceiling is really high. But I do think there are question marks with the defense. A lot of unknowns. In theory, it should be better. But you got to do it with a guy who's never been a coordinator in the NFL. And listen, I don't judge you. There's a huge difference between being a head coach and a coordinator. But like Bill O'Brien's a real head coach. He goes to Boston College, first game, they look like a real team. Was Jeff Halfley any good as a head coach? Now, again, his job with the Packers is not to be the head coach. It's to call the defense. But you know what I mean. When you moved to Arizona, did you sell your condo or keep it as a rental? I'm in real estate investing, so just curious. Oh, that was the IRS right there. Second question. Last year was such a weird year for the Eagles because they were winning games, but something looked off. Do you think they'll bounce back to 2022 from where they dominated and made it to the Super Bowl? When I left my shit there originally and I was going to Airbnb it. And then I quickly found out it was a little more complicated than I thought in terms of the ability to get like longer term tenants. Like I didn't want a guy year round, but it was a fully furnished place. And the plan was to have like traveling nurses or whoever, someone that works for Chevron that's coming in for 2 months, rent it out and charge a lot. And my payment was pretty low. And it was just going to be a lot more difficult than I had thought about in my mind. And then I bought this place and sold it immediately. And yeah, so and I sold it to do the remodel here, and I didn't want to keep it, and I wasn't going to Airbnb it. So yeah, might have set the record in the place too. The last couple of condos that sold didn't sell as high as me, so got out on top. It's just a headache. It was hard. If it was going to be a cash cow, I would have had no problem keeping it. Maybe my idea, I'm sure I could have rented it out empty, but I just offloaded it. I think the Eagles, to get back to 2022, Jalen's got to be really good. So if Kellen does a good job with Jalen and he's an MVP candidate, if I tell you right now Jalen Hurts is an MVP candidate, you'd be like, the Eagles are really good. Even if the defense is up and down. Shit, the Packers have been winning for 15 years with average defenses. Like you don't need to have the 85 Bears on defense. Now, they've invested a lot on the defensive side of the ball, drafting corners, investing in corners. The defensive line, they pay a lot of money to. So the defensive line, just based on talent alone, should be solid, but it's on the offense. They have high paid left tackle. They have a high paid right tackle. They got a high paid guard. They have a high paid, obviously, quarterback, running back, tight end, multiple receivers. And then they just traded for a former first round receiver who's actually, definitely a pretty good third receiver. So to me, it comes to the offense. That's the thing with the Eagles Packers game. No one really has any question marks. Like, we just assume the Packers are going to be good on offense. With the Eagles, it's like, what's this going to look like? Kellen needs to run the ball. One thing they got away from last year is they get so pass happy. Now, part of that is the analytics and the building. They love passing. Run the ball. Just take a deep breath. One thing Kyle Shanahan has taught me, he can drive me nuts sometimes. Run the ball. It will wear the other team out. Stick with it when you have the talent. And they got the talent. Fucking lean on them. That if I was an Eagles fan, that's what I'd be like. I want to lean on these dudes. I'm trying to beat everybody 40-20. NFL Week 1 is here, and a new season means new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Fans have spoken. We want touchdowns. DraftKings heard us and is delivering. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking a player to score a touchdown. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $250 in bonus bets instantly, plus 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. It's code JOHN for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. And get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Mailbag. Outside of quarterback, when looking at the Steelers roster, what holes do you see? I saw Tomlin say today that coming into camp, he had a lot of questions with the wide receivers. He feels better about that now. I'm on the other side. Like, I got to see it. Obviously, George Pickens is a big-time talent. But do they have enough beside him to kind of help Russell Wilson out? The offensive line, while they drafted 3 guys that everyone in the scouting community liked, one of them got hurt. I think the tackle got hurt in training camp. I would imagine. I don't know if he's going to play in week 1 or if he's back. Maybe he's already been back. But the offensive line looked very, very shaky. the mismatched group they had, which I think is a little bit of question mark why they invested so heavily in the draft. So they're going to be depending on very, very young players. They drafted a guy last year in the first round. So is their offensive line good enough? Because Russell does not sit in the pocket. He doesn't sit in the pocket if Trent Williams, Larry Allen, and Anthony Munoz are blocking for him. Dude just likes to move around. So you get offensive linemen that aren't great. All of a sudden, it's a hodgepodge of just craziness happened back there. I don't know why I used hodgepodge right there, but felt like I wanted to use that sometime. So I think their defensive line's really good. DB should be solid. The defense should be solid. Should be really good. But offensively, the line, the quarterback, and the receiving options outside of Pickens, I think are a major, major question mark till proven otherwise. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, you got a question mark, sometimes it gets answered, right? You got question marks when you start doing business with someone or start dating with someone. Then over time, you're like, I feel pretty comfortable doing this. She's cooler than I thought. Doesn't bother me as much. Or this ain't gonna work. That's like football. It's like, yeah, I think we're pretty good at the 2 guard spots. And then 3 weeks later, defensive tackles have 9 combined sacks over that period of time. You're like, yeah, we're screwed. Question for the bag. It's from Kyle. I just saw a poll below and was shocked to see the NFL most overrated player was Josh Allen. Less surprised about Purdy. I agree with your stance on Allen being a generational talent, but just curious to hear your thoughts on other players believing he's overrated. I don't know. I don't see how you could play Josh Allen unless you're asking, like, I guess maybe the Chiefs, but he's beating most teams he's playing, and he's doing it, throwing these ropes, running around. And his team is not like some balanced squad, especially last year. I don't know. Maybe they're just players that are jealous. Maybe because he throws some interceptions. I don't know. You're right. Like, I get the Purdy thing. Purdy's just a polarizing guy, but I don't see how you could play Josh Allen and think he's overrated because the coaches don't believe that. If you read Sando's quarterback, piece, if you got Andy Reid or Mike McDonald or Mike McDaniel or John Harbaugh or whoever in the AFC on the horn, Robert Saleh, ask them what they thought of Josh Allen. I promise you this, they'd be singing his praises. Why don't teams structure contracts for key position star players differently than most of their other contracts? I'll use Purdy as an example because he might end up being the highest paid quarterback next offseason. Wouldn't it be in Purdy and the Niners' best interest to set the terms of the contract based on a percentage value of the cap versus an arbitrary dollar amount that they will have to restructure in a couple of years? Let's say they agree on a 5-year deal at 20% of the cap each year. Then every year the salary cap goes up, Purdy's cap goes up proportionally. It seems like this would be a better way to structure contracts for star players at important positions to keep them happy while providing predictability and stability for front offices. Why would you do that when you don't have to? Because you're eventually going to extend the guy again if you really like him. But I want a guy on a fixed cost. I don't want to get a guy on a variable cost. Right? Like, why do when we do the mortgage, it's great to be on a fixed mortgage for 30 years. You know exactly what you're paying. And the more money you make, the easier it is to make that payment. So you can project out 30 years. But with a contract, if I sign the guy for 5 years, by the second or third year, that number technically is coming down relative to the salary cap. So why would I want it? If I was the player, I would 100% want what you just said because I would always be making more money. I would get built-in raises on a yearly basis. It'd be like a rolling raise. I'd be guaranteed a raise. Where when I pay these quarterback contracts, the hardest hit I get is early on in actual cash. I give you, like Jordan Love, he's getting $75 million in the first, 3 months of the season. And then it slows down a lot in terms of the cash I have to pay him if I'm the Green Bay Packers. But if every year he's getting 19% of the salary cap, that's a lot of money. So I think part of it is like most human beings, I'll deal with this later. And I think that's the mindset that these teams take. I'll deal if he's going to have a problem in 4 years, I'll deal with it later. The 49ers knew when they paid Trent Williams 4 years ago or whatever, it was going to be a problem. We'll deal with it when we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So your idea is something that I'm sure agents and players talk about all the time. It is something teams want to avoid like the plague because it saves them money. So I don't think that's happening anytime soon, I guess is the long way around of saying that.